I want to do this live just for video purposes. So I want to basically go over the second book of Kings, chapter 1, and it's talking about the fear of God. So I want to give this message here regarding how we don't really understand what fearing God means. Like, if you think about how Jesus was in the New Testament, where he healed the sick, he did miracles, he walked on water, he fed thousands of people, he taught, he did so many wonderful things that he was, you know, someone really loved, really like awesome, right? It showed a side of him that was just, self-sacrificing. He gave up his life for us. Okay, so that's the New Testament. Him as a person in life, like in the flesh, correct? So the fear of God, the fear of God is something that's kind of been lost in like in our society, I guess, in religion. Because because he is portrayed to be such a loving person and a loving God, right? A loving God that is forgiving. But at the same time, we hear what he has created. Like he's created everything in heaven and earth and the water. It even includes hell. So, and you kind of wonder, well, why would he create hell? All right. So it's just interesting that there's a side of him that the Old Testament uh, speaks about a lot more. And I just want to give one example of this, and I just kind of want to share with you right here. Second King, chapter 1. I'm just going to read over this, and as I read it, I want to just kind of just go over the information as like a Bible study, so that you can kind of understand why I'm going over this. Okay, so it says here Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. Now Uzziah fell through the lattice of his upper room in Samaria and was injured. So he sent messengers and said to him, go inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover from this injury. So first of all, here the king, there was an accident. He fell through, I guess, the upper room, where maybe a window or something happened. The floor broke. Well, he got injured so bad that he didn't know if he was going to live or die. Am I going to recover from this? He didn't know. So he's like, instead of asking God, he asked Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Interesting, huh? So here, verse 3 says, but the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, the Tishbite, arise and go meet the messenger of the king of Samaria. The messenger. So he's going to intercept them and say to them, is it because there's no God in Israel that you are going to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Now, therefore, thus says the Lord, you shall not come down from bed to which you have gone up, but you shall surely die. So Elijah departed. So that was the message. He intercepted these messengers. He says, you know what? Your king's going to die. Go tell him that. Verse 5 says, and when the messengers returned to him, he said to them, why have you come back? So they said to him, a man came up to meet us, and he said to us, go return to the king who sent you and say to him, thus says the Lord, is it because there's no God in Israel that you are sending to inquire Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore you shall not come down from bed to which you have gone up, but you shall surely die. So then, the king asked, then he said to them, what kind of man was it who came up to meet you and told you these words? So they answered him, a hairy man wearing a leather belt around his waist. And he said, it is Elijah the Tishbite. Then the king sent to him a captain of 50 with his 50 men. So he went up to him, and there he was sitting on top of a hill, and spoke to him, man of God, the king has said, come down. And if you notice there it says come down, it's an exclamation. It was a command. It was an order. He's like, man of God, the king said, come down, right? So Elijah answered and said to him, the captain of the 50, if I'm a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50 men. And fire came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So, right off the get go, he's like, you know what? I'm not coming down. All right, you say I'm a man of God? I'm gonna say, okay, if there's man of God, I'm gonna command fire. So fire came down. I remember earlier there was no man of God because they went to go look for Beelzebub, right? So he's making a point here. God has a messenger. He had no need to go ask somewhere else, right? Thus, he sent fire and killed 51 persons right now. So then he goes, verse 11, then he sent another to him, another captain of 50 with his 50 men. And he answered and said to him, man of God, thus has said the king. The king said, come down quickly. Another order, right? Exclamation point. Command. So Elijah answered and said to them, if I'm a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50. And the fire of God came down and from heaven and consumed him and his 50. So again, you see the same thing happening, right? Let's see if anything changes now. Third time, he goes, again, he sent a third captain of 50 and his 50 men. And the third captain of the 50 went up, and he fell on his knees before Elijah. Notice the difference? He fell on his knees. Why? He says, and pleaded with him and said to him, man of God, please let my life and the life of these 50 servants of yours be precious in your sight. Look, fire has come down from heaven and burned up the two captains of 50 with their 50s, but let my life now be precious in your sight. And the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, go down with him, do not be afraid of him. So he arose and went down with him to the king. So Elijah was afraid. So that's one of the reasons why he sent this fire. He goes, you know what? Nope, you're not going to take me. I'm going to, burn these people. So the tone of this third captain of the 50 was completely different. He was humbled. He was on his knees. He pleaded with him. He begged for his life. And he said, please, So this is the lesson that it kind of took for people back in those days to understand the fear of God, the respect, the reverence of even the man of God, Elijah, because his tone turned real quick. And it also has kind of like, it's a lot of teaching lessons here regarding the way we speak, right? So let's just finish off this chapter here. It says, 16, then he said to him, thus says the Lord, because you have sent messengers to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, is it because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore you shall not come down from bed to which you have gone up, but you shall surely die. So Uzziah died according to the word of the Lord Elijah had spoken, because he had no son of Jeroboam. Jeroboam became king in place of him. Okay, so this is the end of it, right? So the point being here is that his attitude changed completely once he figured out who God was and his messenger and his feelings towards searching for other gods, searching for other sources of help, he was sick. So this is another kind of lesson. Like a lot of times we're sick. So all of a sudden, what do we do? What is our first instinct? Are you a man of God? Do you look for God for his help, for healing? Or is it automatically, you know what? I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to go ask them, and I'm going to take their opinion over anything because they went to school for X amount of years. They have a license in it and a degree. They studied medicine, thus they are smarter and more intelligent. So what they say, I'm going to do. I don't care what God says, or even if he answers me in a prayer or not. I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to the doctor. I'm going to do this. So your life is your faith can be even in a doctor. That's to what this guy said. The king of Uzziah, his faith was in Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, a different god, someone who is totally, the whole reason God was offended was because he didn't even come to him first. So God would have probably healed him, but you know, there was no humility. There was no curiosity. I'm like, hey, what happened to the God of Israel? What happened to the God of David, who liberated him many times? Did he even care about what happened when they took him out of Egypt? Did he even like? Did it cross his mind? You know, because it's kind of like they're living in that era where it wasn't that far behind them, where they could have actually, you know, asked people who saw the finger of God move and how they liberated them from enemies and whatnot. So the whole point is like right now when we think about the fear of God, the reverence that he's looking for in his people today, the holiness that he has, is it still here? Does it exist? Are you afraid? Do you do you think about it that much? It's something that it just comes like first nature to be afraid of God. That's the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So all of our life, like whenever we start working or we go to school, the way we behave with our parents or our siblings, the fear of God should be somewhere in our life. It has to give us some type of motivation to make us think before we speak. Sometimes we speak and we don't care if we're hurting of the fear of God is kind of hit me kind of hard, and I think that's kind of one of my messages as to why we should uh, think about the fear of God, in our daily life and how we walk with the Lord. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Until next time, and let me see if I can shut this off. Oh, give me a second here.